Good evening from London. My name is Vikas, and what's been really great over the last few weeks has been the planning that my colleagues and I have put into launching something called the Teacher Tech Summit, which takes place on the 17th of April. And registrations are live, and we've had really great response. So thank you so much if you've already registered for that. But if you haven't, you still have some time. But what I'd be really grateful for is if you could spread the word and get as many of your teacher friends to participate. That would be really useful to us. I wanted to start with that note, but I use these live streams, the T4TV live stream, as a way of introducing friends who I've met over my journey in education, and I ask them on because they have piqued my interest. And said and engaged in a way that I think is quite powerful and inspiring. And so today's speaker and leader is no different and continues in that vein, and someone whose organization I've known for some time, but I'm glad over the last year or so he and I have gotten to know each other. And that is a gentleman called Tim Howarth, who is the CEO of United World Schools. You may say, what is United World Schools? Well, we can ask the man himself. Welcome to this live stream, Tim.
Thank you.
It's great seeing you. Where exactly are you, so everyone knows where you're based?
So similarly, good evening from London, and good evening from a lockdown London, but we're making the best of it.
And so, Tim, before we start going, I know that there's a lot of friends on here who watch this on Facebook, and I just want to give them some advice. So I want to flash on your comments. So, for example, this person has said, "Thank you, sir. I'm from Bangladesh." Now, I can't see this because what they need to do is they need to go to www.streamyard.com/Facebook and give them consent to flash up your name. So my Bangladeshi friend, if you could just go to streamyard.com/Facebook, you need to give them access so that we can see your name. Otherwise, I won't know who you are until the end of this live stream. This is also being streamed on LinkedIn and on YouTube. And so that's why I'd love to see you go there and give us this permission. So Tim is the CEO of United World Schools. In a very succinct fashion, Tim, tell us about the contours of what your organization does. But if you wouldn't mind keeping it brief, because I have a ton of questions on on some of this stuff. So please tell us, what is United World Schools? I assume you run schools. How many schools? How many kids? Where? That kind of thing.
Excellent, sure. So one, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you here on T4TV. So United World Schools, we work in Myanmar, Cambodia, and Nepal. And we work in the remote regions of those three countries where there are, unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of children who just don't get a chance to go to school because the simplest schools don't exist in their communities. So we work with those communities to solve that challenge, which is to develop with the community and with the local government schools that are free for them to attend, that are relevant to them and often taught in their local language. And so by doing so, we've enabled so far almost 40,000 children from those three countries to go to school across our 250 schools that we've developed to date. And we're in the process of these schools increasingly getting into the government system as well. So there's a sustainability built into that.
And so, Tim, so there are plenty of NGOs in the world that run schools. It's not rare or unique in that sense. And so if there were three very unique things about your organization, what would they be?
Sure. So the first thing we try to do from outset is work with that community and recognize the barriers that they may have to education. Now, language is a massive barrier for many of the students who go to our schools. So it's really important that we enable the mother tongue language to be the initial language of instruction. And we do that by employing people from the local community. And then we build towards the national language and the national curriculum, but it's more inclusive, but by operating that model. The second thing that we do is we twin our schools with a partner, and typically a more affluent partner school around the world, to try and foster global citizenship. and to try and make sure that we've got sustainability again from a funding point of view built into that school, so that we're going to stand by that community for as long as we need to until it's into the government system. And then the third thing is that final point, which is what we're trying to do is make sure that we're strengthening fragile and occasionally non-existent government systems by investing in very remote regions, in very poor countries, but ultimately driving towards a position where these schools become part of a government system. And you can nudge systematic improvement by doing that process as well.
Tim, what I'm trying to figure out is, you're sat in London, right? You're a British registered charity, an English registered charity. Why do you care about Nepal, Myanmar, and Cambodia?
So part of that narrative starts actually with how the charity came to be, which is a family charity where we were all teachers. It was my family, and we were passionate about the power of education. And we had an opportunity to, effectively, with some people we met in Cambodia, to develop a community school for a village in Cambodia that had no school. And it just felt like the right thing to do. Now, that country could have been almost, one of 50 countries around the world, but it happened to be Cambodia. We also found something that was resonating with a lot of people, where we could twin this project with a more affluent school in the UK. And those students cared passionately about global citizenship. They wanted to work out, well, what can I do to help people who are not as fortunate as I am? And they were our first partner school students. And since then, we've had hundreds of thousands of students engaged in that global citizenship. But why should they care? Well, young people care about young people. Young people care about those pathways that others are on. And young people can be a phenomenal driving force for good.
And so, Tim, the T4 audience comprises mainly teachers, school leaders, schools, right? And so if they're watching this and they go to your website and they think, wow, this is a great organization, how can I develop links with UWS and your school? So do you want to give an email address that they can contact you, saying if they want to partner with one of your schools in these 3 countries, they can?
Definitely, yeah. So the simplest email address to use is info@unitedworldschools.org, or you can just jump on our website and put an inquiry via that route as well. No, we warmly welcome schools around the world. We welcome schools in the UK, from the government system, from the private system. We try and be a relatively broad church there in terms of our partners that we want to work with, as long as we're aligned to this one thing, which is driving education for everybody.
And so what I heard from you is this magical thing that schools really think about, which is this concept of community collaboration and partnership. And actually, one of the things that I've realized because of the pandemic, schools that have, I think, functioned really well have been really adept at creating and these kind of collaborations, right? And I define community in a wide sense, not just with regards to parents, but actually a physical locality as well. And so tell us, in terms of your approach with regards to building community partnership for your schools.
So the most important people with our projects is always our community leadership group, because they're the people that ultimately will drive the project. They're the people that need to be empowered, and they're the people that actually can be far more effective than anyone, as you say, sat in London or sat in any city around the world. What we need is local activism, and when we get that right, the power of that is very, very clear. And so our local school support committee, representative group, mums as well as dads, challenging gender bias, make sure that all the children from that community go to school. They make sure that the right people from that community are employed as teachers in that school. And ultimately, they can be the advocates and with the local government to make sure that school is funded by the local government after we've been running it for 5, 6, 7 years.
But tell me, how does that differ to how other people do it? I mean, so what you describe is very much like a parent-teacher kind of association. Is that what the model is? Is that what
Absolutely. And I'm not sure it is that different. And maybe therein lies one of its strengths, that actually, we see schools around the world, when you've got an engaged community, they can do phenomenal things. And, we're all very, very mindful and incredibly considerate of the challenges that teachers and parents and students are facing right now. But we also know that where the communities have pulled together, they're doing amazing things in this lockdown. And that's exactly the same, which is just because it's a low resource environment doesn't mean that the community themselves can't get behind that project, make a real success of it. And our most successful schools undoubtedly are the schools where our community is most vibrant, is most active, is most committed to that school being at the core of that community's life.
And so before I go any further, I want to flash up some comments. But before I do that, please go to streamyard.com/Facebook to give access to them so that we can see your name. So I know you've said you're Ijaz from India. This person says hello from Jordan. I can't see who you are. And you should, Tim, at the end of this, go to our Facebook group and look at all these comments under the video. And so I'm interested in this. I'm from Palestine. And so what is it that, Tim, I want to move on to in terms of what is the magic sauce when it comes to your schools? And I say that, you just said maybe there isn't a magic sauce in that we're looking for shiny innovation or gadgets and that kind of thing. What is it that makes your model tick?
Sure, and we've learned so much as an organization through this pandemic. You could almost say we've crammed about 5 years worth of organizational learning into the last year or so, and it's really brought home to us a few key features. And one of them is, look, under challenging times and in challenging circumstances, keeping it simple is super important, and the quality of leadership at every level is super important. And you can't control much in the world at the moment, but you certainly can't control everything. So therefore, the more you can empower local people at every level of the decision-making process, you get better outcomes. And so what we've tried to do, and we did this relatively early, but we could have done it even earlier through the pandemic, is got the local school support committees, our local teachers, our local community members even more engaged in keeping the education going through the pandemic. And it's just brought home to us, is there a special source? Possibly, but the special source is probably a familiar concept, which is that local engagement is vital. And
so there's a question that arises as a result of the pandemic, which is, especially with regards to girls, how do we re-enroll them in schools, right? And I know a lot of progress has been made in Southeast Asia and many parts of the world regarding this subject, but the pandemic puts that into question. So what is your plan for this?
Yeah, and the pandemic, we think, the recent data says that another 23 million children around the world will never come back to schools. And this is a vital question to be asking. And so, again, it's not that complicated, but it goes back to core principles of making the education relevant, making it accessible. So that's things like language, making sure that it's mindful and appropriate for the local context. So where, for example, we're working in subsistence agricultural communities, we have to be mindful of the harvest season. We have to be mindful of the time when certain children will be required to attend animals whilst parents are attending crops. There are certain things we need to be very mindful of in order to make education work, but also to stand by communities for the long term and be sticky with our approach, and keep coming back and keep investing and keep resilient under all the challenges, because then it demonstrates we're here for the long term. Work with us here, and this school is going to be part of your community. And it means that the generation of illiterate parents that desperately want their children to do anything other than be a subsistence agricultural farmer have a life pathway that's much improved, and as a result they stand with you. And it's inspiring. It gets us out of bed every single day when we have parents that are so motivated to say, I want my child to have a better life than me. And it's why we do what we do.
And so I think what you do is pretty special anyway, and that. I've said this to you many times. But the thing that I think really stands out with regards to your model is this commitment to actually put yourself out of work.
Correct.
And so, and that has been an aspiration of mine for a very long time, in that, we wouldn't have to campaign for SDG 4 or an education for all if every child was in school, right? And we have a fundamental belief in how we strengthen public education systems. And so you have a very unique model as to what you do with your schools to make sure that they, after a period of time, make that transition, and the local government in that area takes control and charge of your school. It becomes a government school. Tell us about how you came up with that, because that is very unique when it comes to you.
Sure. Yeah.
So if you say to me, what is United World Schools? Well, they transition schools from NGO, giving birth to them, to actually governments taking over and taking ownership over them. So that, I think, is what the really special thing is. But tell us how you do it.
Exactly. And if I could ask everybody just to picture a three-legged stool, and it needs three strong legs to work. And that first leg is getting a school going and operational where previously there wasn't one. The second leg is running that school well, and we run the schools with the community, with the government. And that third leg is this piece that you refer to here, which is about, well, how do we now get this school into the government system and therefore funded and will remain there for generations to come? And so it's getting into a system that's already under-resourced and under pressure. That's a big challenge. What we try to do between sort of 5, 6, 7, 8 years worth of running a school is keep it simple and gradually transition it into a condition where it's a great fit for the government system. And by the way, we might be doing additional things to the national curriculum. And so that allows us to do a little bit of systematic nudging, systematic improvement. So we're transitioning schools that are on the government radar with a robust memorandum of understanding, so a partnership agreement to ensure that funding is there for the long term, with head teachers and school support committees that know how to advocate for funding for that school from the local community, from the local authorities, and perhaps most importantly, to have that political capital with the local authority leaders so that they are saying, well, okay, we can work with this NGO who aren't turning up, waving a flag saying, you must have a school. Let's come and do a colonial thing. They're saying, we want to work with you in partnership because we believe in the power of education to unlock the potential of your country. And we're going to stick with you because as we transition schools into our government system, you, the NGO, you go and build a school for the next village. And therefore everything becomes sustainable. And it's one way of tackling this global issue of Sustainable Development Goal 4. And whereas we've set our sights on saying, okay, we're going to get at least 250,000 children this decade into school. Although that's only a small part of Sustainable Development Goal 4, it is a part that adds up to delivering on that global mission, which as teachers we all know is entirely unacceptable for children never to see the inside of a classroom.
That's pretty powerful. So most people run a million miles from government towards them, which is what I think is really special. And so when you have that conversation, so far, if I'm not mistaken, this is a new strategy where you've taken 5 schools, and out of the 245 that are remaining, the aspiration is that all of them go into government ownership, into the public education system, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a nurturing and developing and a maturing process which happens as we twin our schools with a more affluent partner school around the world, and that's the nurturing element. And then the end part of that journey is the start of their next journey, which is as a full government school. Doesn't mean we fully walk away and we abandon and close our eyes. They've become part of what we call our legacy school community, so that teachers are collaborating exactly as T4.tv and the T4 network are doing. That's exactly the same concept, which is we want teachers from all of our legacy schools to be supporting each other collectively as a body, advocating for ongoing systematic improvement. And that enables, we hope, ongoing full and long-term systematic improvement by making sure that the teachers and the communities and the government are all aligned, and we can say, okay, that's good, that's in great shape. We'll go and take on the next project, which is to develop a brand new school for the next community that doesn't have one.
And so, Tim, I'm very conscious of time. There's a few questions that are coming. So
please.
I just want to flash up some of these. So, we have Josephine from India. You have Mukesh from Lucknow in India. And there's this, and again, I don't know who they are, but there's a primary school teacher in Nigeria who says, we are in pain here and our salary is peanuts. Even our minimum wage is being denied. Please, you guys should come and help us here. This is to you as CEO of United World Schools. It gives rise to the question about your expansion plans. Are you thinking about going to other countries? What is the strategy going forward?
Sure, and look, I've got a huge amount of sympathy for anybody at the moment not getting their salary through, and I stand by. everybody who's living through these tough times. Nigeria, unfortunately, right now is not one of the countries that we're working in. On the other hand, we are actively looking for our next, what you might call, big opportunities. And those big opportunities could be the right country to work in. It might be the right partner to work with to go into a new country, and maybe bringing the two together. So we are very, very keen to operate at scale. Our model works at scale. So with deep respect to the teacher there who clearly is needing support, and my thoughts are with them. What we need to do is focus on where we can have the most impact with our resource, and we know that our model and our beneficiaries benefit most when we're able to work deeply with a small number of countries, which is exactly what we're doing.
So I want to ask a question to those that are watching. In the comments section, if you think UWS, United World Schools, should come to your country, can you please post your country's name in the comment box so that we see where these are? If you think there is scope and space for an organization like this to come and enter your country to try to support education there. But Tim, the last question I want to ask you is regarding, and I'll come to those comments, so please do make sure you keep them coming. The last question I want to get to is, you are the leader of an organization that is doing some phenomenal work, right? And I'm always curious to ask folks like you, in terms of what are the 3 leadership lessons you've learned in your career and in your journey that would be useful for others to hear, to try to understand how they develop their own leadership potential. So if you wouldn't mind just thinking that through, and I'm springing this on you, I know that.
Sure.
But you are such a conversant person and a CEO of a great organization will have thought about this endless, I'm sure. And so please do share with us.
It's a great question. Genuinely, I wasn't expecting this. The first point I'd say is all about what's your North Star, and our North Star, the thing that we always point everything at, is our mission. So what we want to make sure is that our mission is completely understood, and actually it's as simple as possible, so that we can talk about it, we can laser in on it, we make decisions based on it. I think the second thing that we've learned, particularly through working in tough times, now in a crisis situation through this pandemic, is that there's a phenomenal amount you can achieve by keeping it simple. And so our modus operandi is to deliver, is to commit, but it's also to keep it simple wherever possible, because you can do an awful lot of good by doing a few things well. And then the third thing, and crikey, hasn't the last 9 months brought this home, is the most important resource I think any organization has is people. And therefore, how you nurture and develop your people is vital. And, we put our hand up. We haven't always got this right as an organization. And you know what? I think teachers don't always get the respect they deserve around the world, but they should be, because they are driving phenomenal change and great stuff. And right now, thoughts are with every single teacher around the world doing a great job under challenging circumstances. And so our people are our most important resource. And our commitment, this year, many years in the future, is to keep investing in our people to help deliver that mission.
Well, many congratulations to you and your team. Here are three of the many responses we've had. Come to Pakistan, please. Come to Mexico. Come to the Philippines. So that's kind of in the neighborhood where you are.
Yeah.
And so, I'm quite inspired by your work. That I've said this to you before, and I'm really pleased that I could host you on this particular live stream.
Absolute pleasure.
Tim, I hope that we'll have an opportunity later on in the year to bring you back and do a catch up as to where you are in your work. So please accept my congratulations and thanks for the incredible work that you do and the spirit by which you approach it, which is that we want to strengthen public education for all. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. And thanks for all you do for the T4 network as well.